Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Her Faith Inspires podcast, where we take cultural issues and we tackle them with biblical truth. Today, we're talking to Cindi McMenamin about her book, The New Loneliness, Nurturing Meaningful Connections. Ugh, start that one over too, Albert.
And it's Mc, not Mac.
Oh, McMenamin. Okay,
McMenamin. Yes,
got it.
there you go.
Okay. Today, we're talking to Cindi McMenamin. Is that right, Cindy?
Yes.
I'm going to do it again.
That was perfect.
Like, why am I stuttering? Okay, here we go. Today, we're talking to Cindi McMenamin about her book, The New Loneliness, Nurturing Meaningful Connections When You Feel Isolated. Cindi is a Bible teacher who stresses the fact that God did not create us to live in isolation. If you've ever struggled with feeling alone in a room full of people, or a room full of people on their devices, you're going to love this conversation. So, Cindi, thanks so much for joining the show. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Well, I always want to know, like, whenever I have an author on, I want to know why. Why, what led you to write the book? I don't know, maybe I'm nosy, but I just think it's interesting what made someone do what they do, like the motivation. So, what drove you to write this?
Well, 22 years ago, my best-selling book, When Women Walk Alone, was released. And that book was all about how we can draw closer to God during our alone times. And I met with my publisher and editor back in 2023 because they had said, what more can we do with that book? How about we do a devotional spin-off? We already did. How about if we do another edition? We already did. And as we were talking about what more we could do with that concept, my editor leaned across the table and he said, Cindi, if you were to write When Women Walk Alone today, would you write it any differently? And I said, absolutely, because although all of that content is still relevant for growing closer to God today, back when I wrote about issues of aloneness, there was no social media. There was no post-COVID isolation habits that we're continuing today. There was no ultra reliance on tech and all of these means that keep us from connecting more with other people. And I said, if I were to write it today, I would take into account what has happened in the last 10 years. And the day I met with my publisher and editor to talk about that just happened to be the day after the US Surgeon General had declared an epidemic of loneliness in this country, stating
Mm,
that continued isolation or failure to connect with others on a more intimate, emotional, and personal level is leading to 50% greater chance of dementia and a 60% greater chance of premature death. So there is a serious health issue
mm.
with not connecting more with people personally because of what's happened in our world and in our culture and in our everyday lives digitally.
Yeah, that's good. What's funny is I was just telling one of my boys yesterday that I saw a friend post on Instagram her quote unquote conversation with Chat GPT and
Mm.
then started to refer to this Chat GPT AI bot as a friend. And
Exactly.
I was just like, oh my gosh, like I would be embarrassed a little bit to post a quote unquote conversation and then call this person, this bot, my friend and let the whole world see that. But I was thinking, oh no, I hope that this is not going to become a thing with people where they
You
make a
know,
greater connection with a bot.
in schools, elementary kids and upwards are being introduced to AI buddies.
Mm,
I recently, in fact, included in my book, in my chapter, The Loneliness of Screens, a woman's story of going to Chat GPT, even gave Chat GPT a name, Sunny, and it became her friend at a time when she was dealing with the loss of her mother. And she didn't want all this input from other people, so she just filled out all the information. And this Sunny became her new friend, and she kept everybody else at a distance and began to grow in a relationship with this person, she thought, which was never real. And this is happening more than we realize. And uh, people have the idea that, as this woman told me, Sonny's not going to offend me. Sonny's not going to take things personally. Sonny won't hurt me. And as I was talking with her, I told her, Sonny's not real. Sonny
Mm.
can't pray for you. Sonny can't support you in the ways that you really need. Sonny does not have the indwelling Holy Spirit to help you and build you up and be the friend, the kind of friend that God created you to have in your life to lift you up and encourage you and be your support network. Um, Months later, she began to kind of like back away from Sunny and let more people into her life, but it kind of became an addictive type of relationship.
Hmm.
That is scary, and it's something we need to be aware of because it can easily happen.
Yes, yes, I can see that, especially as AI gets more sophisticated. Who knows what that's going to look like? Which brings us to our dependence on these devices and technology. And if
Hmm.
anybody is listening, which I know we can all probably say, we've been there, we've seen this happen. You go to a restaurant with your family and everybody's
Oh,
on
yeah.
their cell phones and nobody's actually talking to each other at
Yeah.
the table.
Families, couples,
Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
And it used to be like when I was growing up, we would eat dinner at the table, and my mom and dad really
Hmm.
valued and protected our dinner table family time. And I loved it. I
Yes.
looked forward to it because if something would happen at school, I couldn't wait to have those conversations. But nowadays, for one,
Hmm.
people were getting away from sitting at the table anyway.
Right.
And now if they sit at the table, like I just said at a restaurant, everybody's on
Hmm.
their devices. So what is, what are, what are the challenges of these devices that are hindering these real life connections and are beginning to, I think, isolate us when we're even unaware of that happening?
Well, think about the convenience of screens, especially during COVID when we had those lockdowns. Suddenly, technology was helpful because we could then maybe FaceTime with people who are far away, and or even people who are close if we felt, that we couldn't get out and see them. However, it's very convenient to just shop online, to just do an online chat rather than pick up the phone and talk to somebody. It's much easier to email or text somebody rather than pick up the phone. Teleconferencing now, many people now working from home. I'm one of those people that also, I work from home. I coach writers. I do a lot on my laptop. A lot of it on the phone as well or through Zoom. But my daughter came into my room one day and she said, Mom, you don't have any friends anymore. I said, What are you talking about? I'm an extrovert. I have tons of friends. I'm a people person. She said, I'm not talking about the time you spend with your writing clients or the people in ministry that you work with. She said, when do you go out and do something with a friend? When do you have a heart to heart with a friend across the table and talk about what you're really going through? And I thought, she's right. I have very subtly isolated in a way I didn't realize because through technology, I had the idea I'm connecting with people.
Mm.
But something different happens when you sit across the table and you have eye contact with somebody and you hear their tone of voice when they're talking rather than just reading a text. I believe those divine appointments happen when we get shoulder to shoulder with people, when we show up at church rather than just watch it online. In many ways, because of our screens and because of technology, we've been observing life, observing other people's lives, in some ways, just becoming a spectator, but not a participant in
Mm.
life. And that is damaging our ability to maintain a people presence and to nurture and develop relationships.
Yeah, that is so true. Because like you were saying, you didn't realize it till your daughter kind of brought it to your
Yeah.
attention. And there is something different. My friend, when we moved out of California, one of my best friends still lives there, and she'll just text me. She did yesterday or the day before yesterday. I'm tired of you living over there already. I just want to go eat lunch. And we
Yes.
talk to each other several times a week, but you really do miss the things you used to do together. I mean, we used to
Yes.
work out together. We'd go to our favorite taco shops, over there. We'd go to Marshall's and just do these little shopping trips. And I could be in a Marshall's here with her on the phone, and she could be in one over there. It is obviously not the same. And when you think of
Yes.
it that way, you think of, wow, what is it about being, like you said, face to face across
Hmm.
the table and eating the same thing at the same time, looking in each other's eye and saying, oh, this tastes good, or I like it, or I don't. And it's so
Yes.
simple, yet
And
so
yeah.
so shallow or deep, depending upon if there's a screen in front of you or not.
And when you're with that person, the more you're with them, the more our guard comes down and we get real with them. And
Mm.
think about it. If it's somebody that you haven't been with in a while, but you talk a lot, they might say, well, how's it going? What do we say? Oh, good,
Yeah.
fine, because that's our conditioned response. But when you're sitting across the table from her, or they're shopping with her and she turns to you and says, how are you really doing? And you look into her eyes and you start to tear up, then she knows, okay, let's talk. There's a different dynamic that happens person to person. And, as I look at all this and what's happening in our culture, God did not intend us to live isolated.
Mm.
He created us for community and community with other human beings. He created us for human touch, all sorts of studies about how our physical well-being, we are so much healthier physically just by human touch. We're not getting that through a screen. We're
Yeah.
not getting that through people we think are friends because they're acquaintances and we type and read each other's words.
Mm. Yeah, that's really good. So what I like to think of practical steps, and I don't know if it's going to be anything like new. It's probably going to be things that we used to do before we had the distraction of technology, but we need to be reminded of those things because you can get away from
Mhm.
them. And then we have a generation that's technology natives now. They don't know what it was
Yes.
like without devices. So, what are some
Mhm.
practical steps for those listening to say, do these things, start being mindful of these things, and watch how your real life connections grow?
Yes, at the end of every chapter in The New Loneliness, when I talk about different areas of loneliness, I have application steps to really do it, suggestions like that. In my chapter on the loneliness of screens, for instance, one of my suggestions is, first of all, be deliberate and intentional about opportunities to connect in person.
Mm.
Obviously, if somebody lives far away, technology helps. But look for the ways technology might be hindering you from taking a step where you can be in person or where you can pick up the phone. Okay, voice already is better than just reading.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
then and in person and talking. One of the things is be aware of your screen time. We have settings on our phones where we can get alerts. Many of us have no idea how many times we are picking up and just
mm,
scrolling through the news, scrolling through social media, scrolling through, I've often said in our culture today, we tend to consult Google more than God. When there was
mm,
a situation, we would immediately pray about it, right? What do we do now? I'm going to get some answers. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to get on my phone. I'm going to tell the world on social media how I'm feeling. And God is sometimes the last person. He knows what's going on, the last person we might consult. Another one of the things is practice your people presence. When you're out among people, start practicing some of those things we lost
mm,
during COVID and afterwards. Eye contact, making eye contact with people and simply greeting people. It's common courtesy. We've lost that in our generation. My daughter, who's a millennial, will sometimes tell me, Mom, don't talk to a stranger. I said, Dana, that's politeness, that's courtesy. And I find sometimes when I do, when I simply say good morning, somebody's shocked a little at first, like, do I know you? And they're a little confused. And then they might say, oh, good morning. It kind
yeah.
of trains them how to be an in-person person again. It helps also find other people. A friend of mine calls it find your sameness. I've got those steps in the book as well. There's a reason why small groups at church are growing and really help people because when you find other people that are like you, find a support group of people dealing with the same things as you. There's a reason why people in recovery do so much better when they go to their small group meetings and they talk about it and they get real with one another. We need that, not just online ones. Online ones help if you can't get there, but in the ways when you can get there, force yourself to do it
Mhm.
and be aware of some of those benefits. We have to be deliberate and intentional. I have to make sure I schedule into my calendar so many lunch dates a month and be aware of needing to do it, or I could easily, again, think I'm being very connected, but just do it all on the screen and then realize how long has it been since I've gotten out? How
Yeah.
long's it been since I've seen a face?
Hmm. You're right, because even as a teacher being in the classroom and now a teacher being online, which I love all of my
Mhm.
students, but I can tell you the things that I could do in the classroom as a teacher
Mm.
to really get kids to connect with the lesson. I am so limited online. And
Yes.
when I can do that in the classroom, I mean, there's things in the classroom that you can bring in and you can get the kids to
Yes.
participate in. Whereas online, you're just, you're giving resources that are going to be another online resource, or,
Mhm.
it's not going to be the same. And so sometimes I think to myself, gosh, if I had these students in a classroom, there's so much I could do with them. And that's just
Yes.
one little example. Like you said, there's always going to be benefits to even the online world because I have students that are all around the country and some in other countries. However, I think the benefits of the in-person far outweigh the online, and the
Yes.
online shouldn't be our first go-to. It should be, if we have to do it that way, then we
Exactly.
will.
Right.
Yeah.
Look to technology to enhance what we have, but don't let it replace
Mm,
what you had. Listen to some of these statistics. A study of adults found that the more people used a social media site or several, the lower their mental health and life satisfaction at the next assessment. But after they interacted with their friends in person, their mental health and life satisfaction improved. That's huge.
mhm,
Repeat studies have shown screen activities are linked to more loneliness and non-screen activities, getting outside, doing certain things that don't involve tech, are linked to less loneliness. And those who had taken a break from Facebook in particular, because that was the particular study, were happier, less lonely, and less depressed than those who had used Facebook as usual, and by fairly substantial margins. 36% fewer were lonely.
mhm,
Even you sometimes hear of people saying on their profile, I'm going to take a break for a week, I'll be back. And then they realize, wow, I got back in touch with family.
mhm,
I had those conversations around the dinner table. I learned I can be without my phone in my hand. Studies have also shown our blood pressure increases, our anxiety levels increase when we can't find the phone, when we simply are asked to leave it in the other room or turn it off for a certain amount of time.
mhm.
That shows there are addictive qualities to that piece of tech. And we should be aware of that. We don't want anything like that to master us. Um, yeah, so social media can inflame anxiety among those who are susceptible. Again, there's also other things. Sometimes we feel lonely and we just want personal affirmation. What do? We go to social media. I'm going to post something and we wait for people to like it or share it or comment. And guess what? If people are busy or nobody sees the post because you haven't been on there for a while, or Facebook just decides to limit it
Mhm.
because it wants you to pay to play, that type of thing,
Yeah.
then um, then again, the dopamine rush we were waiting for turns into the crash, and we feel lonelier and even less connected when social media was designed to help us feel connected, kind of doing the opposite.
Mm,
So just being aware of again, for the generation who didn't know life before the iPhone, who didn't know life before the extreme dependence on tech, this is asking them to engage in a whole new world,
mm.
but it's something that helps them as we realize even reaching out and touching someone or getting a hug from somebody and how that just increases our health and well-being mentally and emotionally as well.
Yes. Is there a way to, because, sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish this AI stuff wasn't going crazy. And people are like, where's it going to go? What's going to happen to it?
Mhm.
Or I wish there weren't so many social media apps and it wasn't, really affecting the kids and
Mhm.
just taking away, it lowers the attention span, just having all of these negative effects, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's staying
Mhm.
there. So is there a way, or what would you say is the best way to, it's going to be in your life, you have it in your life, but how do you balance real life and prioritizing those real life connections with at the same time being online?
I have found that it all stems to really our connection with God. That's the first step in my book, reconnecting with God. If I make a point to get out and walk and talk with Him, to spend time in His Word, um, to begin to live my purpose, which is to love Him and enjoy Him forever, that leads to those other things. As I get out, as I walk, as I talk with Him, there are other people. I can be tuned in to what I call those divine appointments, to just reaching out, to extending to somebody. What I try to be deliberate and intentional about as well, and encourage others at the same time, is look for somebody else who might be lonely and extend toward them.
Mm,
As we pour into others, God has a way of pouring back into us, either through that same person or bringing others into our lives. When we are less self-focused, and again, the device and isolating with that phone can help us be very inward, very self-focused as we begin to extend outward. Um, there's a healing process that takes place because we kind of put ourselves on the shelf and we become somebody that pours into others. And what goes around comes around. As we do that, God pours into us. That second step in my book after reconnecting with God is reconnect with your heart. And that's where I have you in the book look at different areas or wounds in your own life that might be preventing you from more in-person relationships. Sometimes we're behind the screen because we feel that protects us.
mm,
That way I can keep people at a distance. That way, if I don't like what they say or they disagree with me, I'll just cancel them or unfriend them, or I'll just go to another friend. That's not real life. And
mm,
when we're around people and we have differences, everybody's different. Everybody will offend us now and then, and we will offend other people now and then. As we're around other people and we extend grace and we work through those differences, which is a wonderful skill to have in the workplace as well as personally, we can get stronger in those relationships with the people we work things through with. And again, when we're confident of who we are in God, who we are in His eyes, we have our affirmation from who we are in Him. We're not trying to seek that from others. We can then be a better friend, and we can improve our relationships, and we can know God's got my back, even if I extend and I take that risk and I make myself vulnerable in this relationship. And if I'm betrayed, if I'm hurt, it's okay. God will open up a door for me to grow in perhaps another relationship with
mm,
someone. And then that's third step after reconnecting with God, reconnecting with your own heart, then reconnecting with others. Those steps like finding your sameness, seeking out a mentor, a good friend, an accountability partner, someone who can fine tune you and tell you those things you need to know. Oh, the value of those
yeah.
relationships. Yeah. And
I
then,
really value the mentorship
yes,
aspect. It's
good.
I feel like it's mentorship slash discipleship,
Yes.
and we see that the older women are supposed to teach
Hmm.
the younger. But as I'm thinking about this, because our church has really invested in that this year. So I have a
Good.
mentee and I'm a mentor for her, and she's like in her 20s, which is really fun
Uh-huh.
because I don't have daughters, I have three boys. But
Okay.
would you say along those lines that mentorship should also be done in person? Have you ever seen even a effective mentorship online, or have you ever checked into that?
You know, that's a good question. Um, I've had some people say to me, like I go out and speak a lot, and they'll hear
Mhm,
me speak and they'll say, "Can you start mentoring me? Can we meet through Zoom?" And I will always tell them, find someone in your local church
mhm,
who knows you, who sees you each week, who checks in with you, because they can present their best foot forward to me and I know nothing about them. Talk to your pastor's wife, get a recommendation of somebody who can walk alongside you,
mhm.
literally take a walk with you one day
Yeah,
and
yeah.
literally meet with you for lunch, because there is that component. Think about that. When we were instructed in the Bible for the older women to teach the younger women, it was a hands-on mentoring,
Mhm,
show them how to care for these babies, show them how to cook, show them how to be a good wife to their husband. It was walking alongside with them,
mhm,
them. And the whole idea of discipleship. Jesus had 12 disciples who for 3 years, 3 years
Mhm.
walked with him, lived with him daily. Even after those 3 years, they still had a long way to go after
Yeah.
Jesus ascended and sent his Holy Spirit. But that tells us that a 4 week or a 6 week discipleship course, even we need more.
Right.
We need years of
Yeah.
being alone with people. I remember being very young. I had just become a pastor's wife at the church where my husband pastored. I was the youngest woman physically in that church and the oldest woman spiritually. I think not a whole lot of Bible knowledge. There were some older women who were wise in some ways, but I remember saying, God, who's going to mentor me? I'm a young mom, I'm a young wife, I'm a young pastor's wife. What am I going to do? And as I began to just be the older woman spiritually in some of these women's lives, just starting up a study with some of these women, God, as I poured into them, then God brought me a whole network of women. It wasn't there at my church,
Mhm.
it was through the network of evangelical women in ministry. But it was amazing to me how it's like one day I turned around and I was surrounded by all these godly women because I took that step to pour into somebody else and then trust God would take care of me as well.
Mhm.
So if you're thinking, I can't find that mentor, there's always someone who knows a little less and maybe hasn't experienced as much life as we have,
Mhm.
be the person for them. And
Mhm.
then trust God will bring somebody on the other side to then help pull you up as
Mm.
well. I've never seen it not happen. God
Yeah.
is faithful that way to
That's good
provide.
because you're right. There is no discipleship without relationship, and the best
Mhm.
relationships are the ones when you live in community
Yeah.
with each other, because that's the example Jesus gave us. I was just curious about your thoughts on that because I figured there's probably women out there who are like, can you mentor me online? And it's just,
Mhm.
like you said, it's not going to be effective. And we all put our best
Yeah,
foot forward, even on our social media apps. Why wouldn't we do it through a Zoom
exactly.
session?
And I've heard a lot of women say, well, the church is no longer relevant, or I don't really have anything, or my church is really big, I don't really connect. But I'm growing, and this podcast host is mentoring me, meaning they listen
Yeah.
regularly, but
Yeah.
there's no personal contact.
Right.
We need to be mentored in person
Yes.
by people, relationship building, not just, again, spectating, but
Yes.
participating in a
Amen.
relationship.
Yes, that's a good word because that is true. A lot of people think, "Oh, that's my mentor." Well, if they don't know you, then it's
Yeah.
not a mentorship. My last question for you is probably the most important one, and you kind of alluded to this along the way, but you're saying God has wired us for these
Mhm.
meaningful relationships, for these deep
Yes.
connections. And in what way are we made for those authentic relationships?
In Genesis 2, when God created man and he said it isn't good for man to be alone, I'll make a helper for him. I don't believe the concept of that was just marriage.
Yeah.
Obviously, it isn't God's will and design for every single woman to be married, every single man. There are some he calls to
Mhm.
singlehood. But
Yeah.
what God was saying is we need the helper. We need the community. Jesus established the church. He poured specifically into three and then the 12, and then they were to pour into others. But it wasn't just, the me and God thing. And I'll tell you, as I was writing this book, God often has me live out the lessons that I'm writing, right? And as I was writing the chapter on uh, the loneliness of friendship struggles, bearing with different personalities, I had a misunderstanding with a friend that hurt me deeply. And it was through text. It was just through a text message after we'd met personally. And my first thought, I don't even think it was my own, my first thought was, I'm done. I will have a relationship with God, but I'm done reaching out to people if this is what they're going to do. And then I thought, no, that's what the enemy of our soul wants us to do. Isolate, go into our cave, don't let anybody in, and then we will go further down that trail of despair, depression, loneliness, isolation. Yes, we need that relationship with God first and foremost, but he created us for community. I think of Ecclesiastes, written by Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived. And in Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 through 12, he tells us two are better than one. For if one falls, the other is there to lift him up. If two lie down, how can they? If two lie down, they can keep warm, but how can one keep warm by
Mhm.
themselves? If one stumbles, the other one is there. And there's that concept again of iron sharpening iron, of just needing others in our lives. In my book, I also quoted from the study done a few years ago called Hardwired to Connect, where they actually did studies on babies and the amount of time they were touched and just the human touch, hearing the human voice, being cuddled and cradled. They were 75% more physically healthy than the others. We thrive. A human being thrives on touch, on human interaction. And
Mhm.
it's something we just can't get through the screen.
Yeah, that's really helpful and very foundational to after listening to this podcast, I think just keeping things in the forefront. I always say sometimes the most profound truths are the ones that you're like, "Oh yeah, I know that," but the
Uh,
culture distracts us from really keeping it here in front of us so we can live according to that. So
yeah.
I appreciate that. So where are you? Are you on social media? Where can we find you? Where can we get your book?
Yes. I'm on Facebook at Strength for the Soul, also at Instagram, Strength for the Soul. My website is strengthforthesoul.com. There are teaching clips. You can learn about my speaking ministry, all of my books there, my coaching ministry to writers. The book's available at Amazon, cheaper than I can sell it for, The New Loneliness. And also, I just wanted to mention several people have said, "Oh, I don't feel lonely, but I picked up your book because I thought it might help. I thought I might be able to help other people who are lonely." And right away in the introduction, I take you to a self-assessment test at the back of the book called How Lonely Are You? And many people have said just reading through those statements and responding in my mind, yes or no, made me realize I am a lot lonelier and a lot more affected by the screens than I realized. And
Wow.
then they found that the book was for them as well. So we never know how subtle something might be impacting our life. If there's something you're dealing with and you can't really put your finger on it, it might be you're experiencing this new loneliness and you need to get back in touch with people in your life.
That's really good. And I yeah, that would be me like, oh, I'm going to get this for somebody else. And I take the test. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need the book. But that it's very helpful because it help. I love self-assessments in that way to kind of bring out things that maybe you bury or that you're not paying
Mhm.
attention to. So I think that
Yes.
that's going to be great. So you guys heard where to find Cindi. I will make sure all the links are in the show notes. Her book is called The New Loneliness, Nurturing Meaningful Connections When You Feel Isolated. I think this is a book for obviously today. We are so online in this crazy self-obsessed, social media world. So go find her website, find her, follow her on social media. And if you have any questions for her, you can contact her. If you have any questions for
Mhm.
me, you can email me at hello@shandafulbright.com and I'll catch you on the next one.